So, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's webinar that's presented by Santa Barbara County of America's Job Center of California. So, the title of the presentation today is Changing Careers in a Pandemic. My name is Dr. Terrance Hinton, and I am a workforce reentry consultant for Medlin Workforce and Reentry Solutions. So before we get started, I just want to give you a couple of tidbits of information about myself, and I'll give you a little bit of background. So I have been in the public nonprofit administration and management field for 10 plus years. And as I mentioned to you before, I am a consultant for Medlin Workforce Reentry Solutions. My area of expertise is reentry and workforce development. And what I mean by reentry is I specialize in working with people who have been formerly incarcerated or criminal backgrounds. For those of you who might know someone who has been incarcerated, you might be familiar with some of the experiences that they have on getting employment, along with a bevy of other issues after leaving prison. And so that is my area of expertise. With that being said, I do a lot of workforce development activities and consulting and training for people from all walks of life. But that is my area of specialty. To date, I have worked with close to 2,500 people, and many of them have been formerly incarcerated in regards to helping them. And I've been very fortunate to see thousands of these individuals and working closely with them one-on-one become successful and find suitable employment. Some other activities I do, I am also currently a professor of criminal justice and public administration at The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. I often teach off and on at two other universities called Franklin University and Columbia Southern as well. And in terms of outside of academia, again, I do have experience as a former reentry program manager for a nonprofit agency that I'm going to talk about real briefly here called Alvis Incorporated in Columbus, Ohio. Also, if you ever have any questions or want to contact me, I can be reached at my email below, or you can look me up on LinkedIn if you want further information. So, couple of things we're going to talk about before we get started. To give you an overview, again, we're talking about switching careers in a pandemic, right? And a lot of people are actually doing that. I'm going to talk about that here shortly. So one of the first things we're going to cover is, how did we get to where we are today? Many of you know a lot of those, some of the events that have happened around our nation in the past several months, but I'm going to briefly cover that to kind of give you an overview of where we're at this point. And then we're going to transition into post-pandemic. Obviously, COVID is still with us and will be with us for a while. But as we are starting to see, things are starting to swing the other way with vaccinations, and numbers are kind of going down. This is not to say that the pandemic is over by any stretch, but in my opinion, and in really examining a lot of things that are going on right now, I do feel like we're on the other side of this. And so as we're talking about, for those of you thinking about switching careers, I want to give you some things to consider as you're making that transition. We're going to move to the part 3, and this is probably going to be the most important part of this presentation, talking about self-evaluation. I'm going to talk about what do you value and what's important to you, because that is going to drive the next step that you take when you switch careers. And then we're going to get into some more tangible things, such as doing research. We're going to talk about transferable skills and a career path discovery, right? So you're transferring from one career to another. Some of you may or may not have experience in the field that you're going into. And one of the things I really specialize in working with in people is really helping them to identify what those transferable skills are. So we're going to cover that as well. Hello. So then after that, we're going to transition into some actual concrete action steps when you talk about applications and communicating and networking. And then when you do all those things, we're going to put this all together and see what it looks like at the end. So what do I hope you get out of this today? Well, a couple of things. So one of the first things is I hope that the information I'm going to share with you all will assist you in helping to understand the process of changing careers. And if you've noticed, I say process for a reason because it is a process. This is not something that happens overnight, right? And I'm going to talk to you about some of those things because I know firsthand what it means to switch careers. Not only have I helped thousands of people change careers, but I myself underwent a career change last year. So a lot of the information I'm going to share with you all today are things that not only that I'm sharing with you, but things that I actually went through myself. Also, after today, it is my hope that you understand the economic landscape today, because a lot has changed, and we're going to talk about that in the next couple of minutes, and how to navigate what we call the new normal, right? A lot of people are talking about things going back to normal, which in some cases they are, but economic-wise and job-wise, some things will never be the same again as they were pre-pandemic. So we're going to cover that. Also, understand the importance of networking, marketing, communicating, and utilizing social media, right? This is not something that you can do by yourself. If that was the case, everybody would be doing it. And so I hope that after today's presentation, we'll cover all those things and give you a good sense of direction of where you want to go. And lastly, the most important thing is understanding, again, this process of self-evaluation on what it is you ultimately want, and knowing those appropriate steps to take, and really effectively researching what you're after and going for it. So before we get started, I want to give you a little bit of background additional background about myself. And there's a reason why I'm doing this, because it's going to really give you the context of everything I cover moving forward. So before, in last year, I was a program manager for a workforce development program. And actually, I managed 2 workforce development programs. But the one I really wanted to briefly cover with you all today is a program I managed called the EDGE program. And the EDGE stands for Empower Development by Gaining Employment. And again, as I spoke to you all earlier, my specialty is working with people who have former backgrounds. If you don't mind, whoever's in the background, if you don't mind muting, I appreciate it. I'm getting some background noise. Thank you. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. But as I was saying, this program was designed to help individuals with involvement in the criminal justice system and really helping them to overcome those barriers. And so this program was provided and funded. It was a joint effort with the City of Columbus and the Workforce Development Board of Central Ohio. And it began in January 2020. So it's a 5-month program that started in January, and it went from January to June. And then we took a 2-month break, and then we went from August to January of 2021. And here's a little bit more information if you want to know about Alvis. I'm not going to cover them in detail, but if you want to know more about that program, you can go to this link below. So I'm skipping a whole lot of details, and I'm doing this for a reason. So we had 34 participants go through the program. It was a very intimate program. I had 34 individuals. Everybody had backgrounds, people who literally served 2 to 3 years in prison, to I had several of my clients serve life sentences, 30+ years. So we put them through this workforce development program. At the end of the year, and keep in mind, if I can back up for a second, this was a brand new program that I was in charge of running, along with a staff of people, as well as my own staff and volunteers. And I took over the program. I started in January of last year. Little did I know that the world was going to change in March, just 2 months later. And the reason I bring this up is because At this point, 2 months into the program and working with my clients, we had a good idea of what they wanted to do job-wise. The pandemic happened and everything changed. And so literally with every participant, I had to sit down with each of them, and we kind of had to reinvent and start from scratch again, and switch careers due to the pandemic taking place. And so long story short, through that, at the end of the year, 30 out of 34 of my clients got employed, making an average of $16.50 an hour. This $16.50 may not seem like a lot to you all, but when you have a felony in your background, it's a big deal. So I was very proud of those accomplishments. 26 out of 34 of those individuals also secured an industry recognized credential at no cost to them because we funded it for them across 10 different sectors. I worked with 3 individuals to get their GED because I'm big on education. And I had 4 enrolled in college for their associate's degree in culinary, business, electrical, apprenticeship, real estate certification. These individuals came from completely different walks of life. And I was able to work with them to get them going to what they really wanted to do. Because of the program's success, even with the pandemic, my program was covered, gained media coverage, and this is the link right here if you ever want to look at it. I'm sorry. Here's the link below if you ever want to look at that. You can actually look that up, or you can type in my name, Terrance Hinton, EDGE program, and it'll be a video of me kind of briefly talking about the EDGE program. So now that I've covered that, how did we get here? And when I say get here, I'm talking about the pandemic, obviously. Many of you know the story. And I say March 12th to the 16th is kind of our starting point because that's literally when everything around the country shut down, right? Millions of people were laid off. There was an economic shutdown. Highest unemployment seen since the Great Depression, which was in 1929. Millions of people laid off at historic levels. At that point in time, we still did not know what this virus was doing, how if impactful it was. We just knew that the world literally shut down. For those who could work remotely, which I'm going to talk about here shortly, they were allowed to continue work, but everybody else was unemployed. And so to address this issue, the government started issuing unemployment checks and I believe 3 stimulus checks to try to address this issue. So in that year, a lot changed. And a lot of the things that I'm going to share with you all, some of the stuff you already know, right? So industries have changed since that point. Retail stores such as malls have changed. A lot of people shop online, such as with Amazon. Now, I would argue that a lot of people were using Amazon before the pandemic, right? But after the pandemic happened and it forced everybody home, everybody was relying on Amazon. People who didn't have Amazon accounts all of a sudden got them, right? And so a lot of your shopping now can be done online with a click of a button. For those of you who are familiar with Alexa, you can literally sit on your couch and hook up your Amazon account to Alexa, and you can tell Alexa what you want, and it can be delivered and be on your doorstep the very next day without you having to leave your couch. Administrative and office and clerical work is effectively done remotely now. Business managers figured out that the secretary doesn't necessarily need to be there to do emails and answer phone calls. They can do that at home. The healthcare industry has changed. If any of you have been to the doctor lately, you know now a lot of, for the year of the pandemic, they turned to telehealth, and a lot of that is staying the same now. Doctors have figured out this is a lot better. So you have a telehealth appointment for maybe 20, 30 minutes, and if they deem the situation serious enough for you to come in, then you make an appointment. If not, everything is taken care of right then and there, and you can get a prescription faxed over, and then you can go from there. Because I work in the criminal justice system, I am definitely familiar with court cases that obviously used to be done in person. With the pandemic, they were forced to go to video streaming, where the accused or the defendant was in a room somewhere else, and the judge interacted with them there. And a lot of those things are here to stay. And one of the biggest ones, colleges and universities, online learning. essentially Ohio State went to virtual learning almost overnight. Universities around the country. And what I didn't put in here was schools, obviously K through 12. You had kindergartners doing virtual learning, hybrid learning. Okay, so when we talk about the world being changed, from an industrial standpoint, there was not an industry that was not impacted in some way, shape, or form. So a couple of things when you start talking about switching careers, now that we're on the other side of this pandemic and things are going back to normal or the new normal, there are a couple of things that you need to consider. Obviously, first and foremost, COVID is still here. Um, so you really need to take that into consideration for those of you who might be more at risk, um, have higher risk standards. Vaccinations are now plenty of you available. I'm going to tell you right now, this is not an endorsement to get vaccinated or to not get vaccinated. That is a personal decision for you to make with you and your family. I respect people's choice to take it or not to take it, or for those who want to wait for more information. But again, everybody's situation is different. So if you are somebody who is high at risk and vaccinations are available and maybe you don't want to take it, that's something that you need to keep in mind as you start talking about switching careers. What are you going to be exposed to? Are you going to be around people? Okay, so these are just some things you need to think through as you think through switching careers. One of the good things I would tell you is currently, and this was based off of an article I found just last month, US job openings, there's a record 8 million, over 8 million jobs that are available right now. But one of the biggest problems is businesses cannot find enough workers. And if any of you have been out and about in the community, you've probably noticed employers, not only are they having job applications out in front of stores, but I was at Home Depot yesterday and literally they have a big sign out the front, we're hiring. Okay. And so everywhere I've been across the country, there are plentiful jobs available. But one of the biggest problems is businesses can't find there are not enough workers. Now, according to economists, there's a couple of reasons why that's happening. One of the reasons is obviously COVID. You still have some people that are hesitant to go back to work due to their exposure or their pre-existing conditions. Again, this is something to consider when you talk about switching careers, because if that is how you feel, and maybe you are somebody who has been vaccinated or hasn't been vaccinated, you need to take that into consideration moving forward. The other big thing that economists are talking about why there's so many jobs available is because of unemployment, right? And every state has been different, but to my knowledge, the second round of unemployment was extended until September of this year. But what we are finding, and at least in my state, and I've seen this in other states, is because of the record number of jobs available, our states are now selecting and choosing to end unemployment early so that and opt out of the remaining time to get people to go back to work. So I know in my state, at the end of June, the unemployment is going to end because of that, to address this issue. So that's something you need to consider. The unemployment is not going to last for too much longer. And in some states, they're going to be ending in the next couple of weeks. So be aware of what your state is doing if you are somebody who is on unemployment. Another big thing, more than half of American workers say they're looking for new job opportunities or will consider moving jobs if approached by another company, according to a recent study. Okay, so for those of you who are looking to move into a different career, you are in select company. There are a lot of other people thinking about the same things. And there's a reason why I bring that up, because if you are somebody looking to make this move, there are going to be a lot of concrete action steps that you are going to need to take as soon as possible moving forward, because I can tell you this record number of 8 million jobs is not going to last long, especially once unemployment ends. Something else you need to think about. So what I've been talking about is things for you to consider. Now I'm going to also briefly talk about businesses themselves, okay? And I call it the post-pandemic bottom line, because at the end of the day, Businesses are in the line of business to make money, right? And so one of the things you need to know right now is remote work and virtual meetings are likely to continue. A lot of businesses found out when they were forced to send everybody home, and now we have businesses have like 15 months, I'm sorry, worth of data to kind of look back at productivity levels, and they've been able to see that although employees were working from home, in many cases they were not only as productive, but in a lot of cases they were more productive than when they were in the office, right? And there could be a number of reasons for that. All this to say, from a company's bottom line business, the first thing they start thinking about is, okay, if we have sent 500 employees home that used to work in a building, is it really necessary to bring 500 people back? What if we can bring back 250? And we can cut down on our space, which means we don't have to pay as much rent, or we don't have to pay as much for internet bandwidth, right? And so a lot of companies are shifting to flexible workspaces that will bring fewer workers into offices. Also, you have to take into consideration, some people are choosing to get vaccinated, some people are not. How do you know which ones are and which ones are not? Okay, so there's still risk in bringing a lot of people back. So companies are kind of rethinking those things and going to maybe a remote, a hybrid model. And in fact, a survey last year in August of 278 executives found that on average, about a third of them plan to reduce their office space by 30%. And this was based off of a survey in August of last year. I would guarantee you that this number has gone up since then, because now companies have 15 years, right? If the pandemic, when everything shut down in March, up to present day, they got 15 months of data to now go back and look at productivity levels. And so now a lot of them are rethinking their business model. And again, as I say here, reduction in overhead costs. Again, we're talking about bottom line. And as we move forward into 2021 and 2022, I believe that companies are going to continue to rethink their business model, because companies are always looking to do things faster, more efficient, maintain those productivity levels, and spend less money. That's important for you to know for this reason. The concept of a 9 to 5 has changed. Obviously, when I say 9 to 5, that's kind of the standard bearer of work. I know for many of you, and I've worked shift work before, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. in a plant, or overnight. Nurses work rotating shifts. There's all kind of occupations out there that have different hours, right? But for the sake of this conversation, we're talking just 9 to 5 concept. You get up in the morning, brush your teeth, you get ready, you drop the kids off to school if you have any, you go to work, you have your lunch at 12, you have your 2 15-minute breaks, you clock out 4:30, 5 o'clock, you get back in traffic for an hour when you come home, right? Monday through Friday, week after week, weekends off. Well, now that concept has changed. And so now, post-pandemic, you all have options now. For those of you who are looking to switch careers, you have options. You can now today choose whether you want to work physically in person to person, you want to work hybrid, or you want to work remotely. And even better, you can now work anywhere in the world. So your employer might be in Seattle, Washington, and you're located in Sarasota, Florida. Or you might be located physically in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, but your employer is in New York City, New York. You can now work anywhere in the world, and you can actually relocate to anywhere you want in the world now. Because if your job is virtual, you are no longer bound to staying in a physical location. And this may sound like a push toward hybrid and remote working. What I'm really wanting to reiterate here is that you have options that you didn't necessarily have before. And again, you can even do part-time work remotely. If you're somebody that likes the person-to-person, face-to-face interaction, you can actually do remote work part-time. Because I know for some of you, you might have 2 jobs to try to make ends meet. Well, as opposed to working at one job physically and then going to another physical location and driving and traffic and running to get dinner, you can actually just go home and get on your laptop and be at home within the confines of your own home and have a part-time job. So again, these are just things that I'm bringing to your attention when you start thinking about what kind of career you want to go into. These are things that you need to consider. I say all that to say this. There's a lot of opportunities out there. The sky's the limit. So get excited. This obviously the pandemic was terrible, and a lot of people have died because of it, and it's changed. A lot of negative things have happened. We know all about that. But there have been some good things that have happened, and particularly when it comes to employment, you now have options. So get excited, embrace creativity. If we learned nothing else in this past year, we learned how to figure things out and continue to move forward. So embrace creativity. That might involve you getting out of your comfort zone. But so what? The time to do that is now. For those of you who are thinking to take this leap and switching careers, this is the opportunity to do this is now. So get excited. Uh, and the time to get going is now. Again, there's 8 million jobs available, but I will tell you that that's not going to last long. So be sure that for those of you who are making this consideration, you want to take some concrete action steps. And I will also say this, you do not want to do this alone. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. And what I'm about to cover, I think is going to help you with your next steps. So this is probably the most important, I would argue the most important slide on this presentation. And there's a reason for that. Performing a self-evaluation. Before you switch careers, one of the first things, the very first thing, the most important thing I would recommend you think about is, what do you value? What is most important to you? The reason why I say that is because whatever you value and whatever is most important to you, that is what's going to drive your career and what career you dump into. A lot of you, a lot of people think that money is the reason why people go into careers, but based off of what happened last year, you are starting to see a shift for a lot of people who realized that the money wasn't worth the burnout, and that maybe they valued other things such as family and flexibility more. That's not to say that that's everybody, but you really need to, when you are thinking about switching careers, you need to do something and go into a career that you're going to feel fulfilled in, and it's going to make you happy. Because when you go to a career, when you go into something that you value, something that you love, or it allows you to do the things that you love, you will be successful and you will make the money that you need to make. So the first thing you need to do before you go into do anything else is you need to define what's most important to you. So for example, if I say I want to switch careers and I want to be a financial bank manager, the first question you ought to ask is, why do you want to do that? What is most important to you? Well, bank managers make a lot of money. Okay, let's just say for the sake of the argument, they do. But what does that time commitment look like? Or where you have to be at the bank Monday through Saturday and you're on call Sunday. Well, hang on a second. And I used to go walk through this process with my clients where they would say those things. And then I would say, okay, well, do you have a family? Well, wait, if I got to do all of that, I got a wife and kids at home. That won't fly. Okay. So now you got to reassess that situation. If you have kids and you have a family at home, is that career the best thing for you and your family? Now, if you're somebody single and you have no commitments, the sky's the limit and you don't mind working that much, then fine. And that's something that you enjoy and it energizes you, great. But you have to sit back and really look at what is most important to you today. And do understand that that can change down the road as some of you get married, maybe you choose to have children. Be prepared to understand that your mind might shift. So again, do you value wealth? Do you value flexibility in your job? Status. Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be a leader? When you are a leader and a manager, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. I like to say it like this: when you become a leader and a manager, that involves working nights and working weekends most of the time in some capacity. Is that something that you're willing to deal with? Do you want more time for family? Maybe you don't have family. Socialization. Do you like working with people, or do you like being behind a computer at home on the sofa? Uh, Health, again, COVID. For some of you, you might have COVID concerns. Maybe you're not ready to go back into workforce, but you know it's time to work. Well, maybe I need to consider an online job if I'm not ready to go back into working face to face. These are all things that you need to think about before you think about a career, because your why is going to be the driving force to your what. Once you know that, only then you go here and say, what do you want to ultimately do job career wise? But as I'm going to talk about on the next slide, what you choose to do job career wise should be in alignment with what you value. Okay. So once you figured out what you value, all right, and now you are kind of you have maybe an idea. Some of you might have an idea of what careers you want to go into. Here's a couple things you need to do, and one of the biggest things is you need to do your research. Okay, so obviously, and these are the things that I used to sit down with my clients to do. We would start talking about career occupations that match what you value and what you enjoy doing. I tell people this all the time, and I know it's hard sometimes for this to resonate with people. You do not select a job based on how much it pays. You select a job based on your skill set and where you at today. If you find a job that's in your skill set with what you do, what you enjoy doing, and it gives you the flexibility to spend time with your family or do the things that you value, you will make money. You will be successful. But that's a process. Again, that takes time. A lot of people, when they're looking at a job, they look at the dollar signs. This is not to say that money is not important. I understand everybody's situation is different. Everybody has bills. Everybody has financial commitments. But when we talk about switching careers, you want to do something that you enjoy doing. I am happy to say that I work for a living, but I don't work because I love what I do for a living. I could do it for free if money was not an object. I enjoy doing it that much. And so that takes steps and that takes a process. Okay. So one of the things that I walk clients through and that I strongly advise is that you do a skills assessment. And there's many of these online that you can find. And essentially what a skills assessment does is it sits you down and says, okay, what does Terrance Hinton, for example, using myself for example, what does Terrance Hinton like to do? What is his skills? What is he good at? And everybody has different skills, right? So are you somebody that you like to initiate new ideas? Maybe you like handling details. Maybe you're coordinating a task. Maybe you like managing groups and managing people. Maybe you like to teach. Maybe you like to coach. Maybe you like to delegate. Maybe you don't want to be a leader. Maybe you're a good grounds working on a ground crew. Okay. It really doesn't matter. Everybody's skill is unique. Can you write? Can you speak? Can you research? Are you good with your hands? Okay. Do you like construction? Do you like tools? Do you like working with cabinets? Do you like puzzles? Figuring things out. These skills assessments, the purpose of that is really to sit you down to look at what you are good at and what you enjoy doing. And what I've even found is a lot of assessments now, they'll even, once you put down what you enjoy doing, they will populate those into a group and it will point you into the direction of the careers that you need to be looking at. Because what they're saying is you are good at these things. These are the areas that you need to go into. If you like to teach, then you need to think about being a teacher. Now, whether you start talking about teaching in high school, elementary, or college, that's a different ball game. But the fact of the matter is, if you like teaching other people education, then you need to look into that area. Okay. And so once you get an idea of that and your skill set, you want to start narrowing your search down and identify, I say 3 to 4 areas. You don't want to be all over the place with 10 occupations about you think that you can go into. I would really narrow it down and focus on 3 to 4 areas. And one of the first things I would ask myself, and I'm going to talk about this on another slide, is, do you know anybody in this industry? Number one. Number two, do you have the skills in this industry? And if not, can you obtain them? Another thing you need to look at, obviously, is there part-time availability, and what about the income outlook? And notice the order that I have this in. I have income outlook last, right? Because again, we're taking this process of finding out, first of all, what your skill set is. I mean, what you value, what your skill set is. You've narrowed down your search. Do you have these skills? And if you don't, how many of them do you have? Can you obtain them? And is there part-time availability? And last, what is the income outlook? The reason why I say part-time availability, and this is very important, I would strongly recommend when you look to switch careers, do so on a part-time basis. And the reason why I say that, I always tell this to my clients, is you do not know, even with doing a skills assessment and narrowing things down, things don't work out sometimes for a number of reasons. So you don't want to just jump into something full time. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who tell me they want to run their own business or they want to run their own nonprofit, and they're gonna get put in their 2 week notice and then they're gonna get started. Well, that's not the smart way to do that, because there's a lot of things that go into being a business owner. What I recommend is, hey, if you want to be a business owner, that's fine. Let's take those steps. Let's do your research. Let's look at the skills. Let's look at what you want to sell. Look at the market. Do you know somebody in that area? Okay, let's talk to them, interview them, ask them some questions, do your homework, and then if you get to a point where you feel comfortable with that, do it part-time. So you still have your full-time job, because you still have to make your ends meet, right? And for some of you who have other financial commitments and responsibilities, you own a home, maybe you support other family members, you have children. You can't afford to just jump into something else full time, and then if it doesn't work out, you end up jumping out, right? So, and yes, volunteering is good too. I'm going to get to that here in a second. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's coming up on the next slide. So you cannot afford to, I'm sorry, just jump into something full time. So I always encourage do that part time, or yes, volunteer, which I'm going to talk about here briefly. So when we talk about skills, this is one of my favorite activities that I do with all my clients. And this is really is what opened the door for a lot of my clients. Transferable skills. On the previous slide, I was talking about skills, but there are a lot of skills today that are transferable. So say, and one of the things that I've been very successful at is moving people from one career to something completely different. And so one of the things we talk about when I'm taking clients through this process, is we talk about transferable skills. And that's skills that have you acquired during any activity in your life. And I want you to keep in mind when I say any activity, because the next slide is going to really highlight this example. So not confined to one field, and can be transferred to any job, right? So when we talk about that, we talk about your customer service, your multitasking, other skills, leadership, communication. A big one I love is problem solving. The world is full of problems, and I can tell you all, if you know how to solve problems or take steps to solving problems, the sky is the limit. Employers love people who solve problems. How many times have you heard of on your job somebody complaining about something at the job? And then take it a step further, how many people come to that you hear talk about a solution? The people who have solutions are the people that will get hired and can be successful. So if you are a problem solver, definitely that's something you want to highlight on your updated resume, which by the way needs to be updated. And your skills should be skills that match the job description. So you might look for a job in which, say, for example, you want to go into IT and you want to be a computer programmer, which means you're looking at program. And I'm not an IT guy, but it's a remote job and you're at home. Well, if you have great customer service skills, that's great, but you're not going to be talking to anybody. You're going to be behind a keyboard. So customer service may not necessarily be something that's important to that job. So you definitely want to pay attention to the job description. And I like to tell people, your job description is your cheat sheet, right? They're telling you what they are looking for. So if I'll take myself, for example, I want to be a computer programmer, and I put on my resume, well, I have a certification in physical fitness to be a personal trainer. That's great, Terrance, but what does that have to do with being a computer programmer? Our job description is telling you what we are looking for. And if you don't have those skills, then why are you here? And so a lot of times, uh, these transferable skills, some of you might go into a field that you have zero experience in. But if you have problem solving, and this is very important, when you get into an interview, be sure that you have examples of a problem that you had on your previous employer and what you did to address that issue. If you have customer service experience, maybe you haven't worked at a customer service job, but you have customer service experience, give an example of what that was like. Okay. There are so many, and I have over here a whole bunch of other transferable skills: self-management, critical thinking, information handling. What's important to note that whatever skill you list as a transferable skill, be sure that you have an example to follow up with that skill. Just like I said, if you are a problem solver, tell me how. An employer is going to want to know that. Give them concrete evidence, give them numbers, give them an example of something that you've done on a previous job. If you have customer service skills, again, give them specific, be prepared to give specific examples. And again, when you find those jobs that you want to apply for, be sure you're looking at that job description. The job description is going to be your go-to and to help you think about what that employer is looking for, so that when you get into, and this is a whole nother webinar, when you get into an interview, you're going to be talking in job description language. You're going to be talking their language. Okay. So to give you an example of transferable skills, so I've made thousands of resumes for people. And so this is an example of somebody who was in one career and they were looking to go into a customer service job, had zero customer service experience, or so she thought. And so we went through her sheet and look at all the things that she did. And again, when we talk about transferable skills, we're talking about skills that you have acquired during any activity. So on her final resume, this is what I wrote down: confer with client to arrange date, time, and number of guests. And I'm not going to read all of these. Met guests and conversed with them to establish rapport, responded to written and telephone requests for services, and contributed to the profitability of the company. If you notice, these are all action verbs. Okay. So this is somebody who has this experience based off of what they told me when I started asking them a series of questions. So a lot of times when I ask people, what job do you think this is? People think telemarketer, customer service representative, sales representative, front desk clerk. This person was actually an adult entertainer. I know some people know that, call it a stripper. Again, I want you to keep in mind that the population of people that I worked with came from all different walks of life. Okay. So this person in their past didn't have a lot of experience, but they were adult entertainer. But if you start looking back at what an adult entertainer does, they do these things for a living. Now, I'm not here to highlight and endorse that line of business, right? What I'm trying to get you all to understand is the transferable skills. If you can market those skills, then you can switch careers. And I'm happy to say this person, this is an actual resume I did. This person is a customer service sales rep today. Okay. So my point in saying that is, and that's a whole nother webinar as well, that process of how do you talk about something like that when you're trying to change careers. And again, you have to highlight your skills. And so the good thing about this is applicable to any industry. So I've worked with people who have never had a job before, and yet I've transferred people who have no employment. They're now in janitorial services, secretary and office assistant, computer programming, banking industry. I've had people go from the banking industry to janitorial services, and janitorial services to banking industry. Okay, there are transferable skills there. I have had people go from janitorial services to now they own a janitorial service. So the beautiful thing about this is keep an open mind. Again, the sky's the limit here. So when you are going through this process of trying to switch careers, keep in mind that just because you don't have experience does not mean that you can't qualify. Again, if you have the skills that are transferable, if you volunteered, which I'm going to eventually cover here, if you maybe you've interned somewhere, there's all sorts of ways to get your foot in the door. And I would tell you, the biggest part is you just want to get your foot in the door. Okay. Once you get your foot in the door, then you can start taking those other additional steps. So you've done your research, you've done your homework, you know what you want, and you figured it out, you know what you value, or you have an idea. Once you know what you want, go for it. There's no need to wait around. Again, 8.1 million jobs available. The time to act is now. So apply. as one of my listeners today rightfully said, volunteering. Volunteering to me is probably one of the best things you can do because it's free. You can set your own hours. You can really get the hands-on experience to see if you like it. Now, in some places you can't volunteer. So there are other options. Interning, again, networking, attending job fairs, webinars, such as the one we're on today. Again, with things being virtually now, you don't have to go to a job fair in person. There's a lot of them that you can do online. LinkedIn, if you do not have a LinkedIn account, I highly encourage you to get on there today. LinkedIn has worked wonders for me. I've been able to connect with people all over the United States and in other countries through LinkedIn. It is a valuable tool, especially for those of you who are trying to get in the field and maybe you don't know anybody personally. LinkedIn is a very wonderful tool to help you connect with other people. Again, another valuable one. If some of you, those of you who know people in the industry that you want to go into, by all means, connect with them. Please meet with them. And nowadays, it's hard to get people to kind of connect because everybody's so busy. It's hard to sit down and meet for lunch. Send them a Zoom link. Again, the world has changed. And not that I'm against socialization, right? But in today's world, a lot of us don't have time to go and take time, an hour out of our day to go drive to a Starbucks and sit down with people. But hey, can you sit at home and meet via Zoom or get on the phone with one of your friends? Ask them questions. What is it like? What's the time commitment? What do you think? People who might know you well, that your friends who are in the industry, tell them to give you positive feedback. Hey, you know me, Terrance. What do you think my prognosis is for this? Is this something I should consider? So get a lot of feedback from them. Set up job alerts and notifications. When a certain job pops up, especially with job sites like Indeed, you can set up an alert where if you're looking to be a CDL truck driver, it will populate to so where any CDL truck driver appears, it'll come to your email. Be very careful with that because otherwise it'll flood your inbox, but you can set up alerts and notifications. This is very important. I would tell you firsthand, you're not going to have everything figured out when you're switching careers. You just want to get started. Okay. I know for some people, this is very hard because they want to have everything figured out. But this picture that I have here is for a reason. It's a step by step process, one foot in front of the other. Okay. One day you might take 2 steps forward. You might even take a step back, but you want to keep moving forward. Okay. This is not something where you make leaps and bounds. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. But the big thing is do not get complacent. Go forward, get started taking those steps. So when you put this all together, and I'm going to give you all 4 examples, okay, of people who actually switched careers, who I personally worked with. 3 of them I personally worked with, and then one is obviously myself. And I'm going to tell you what this process looked like. So the first person I'm going to talk about is me. So I was at my previous employer in March of last year. As we all know, everything shut down. I was sent home. I was sent home. Fortunately, we were able to, I was able to work online because I was a manager. And so when I got home, I found it was weird at first, but for the next couple of weeks, I realized not only was I getting my work done, but I was more efficient in getting my work done. I could think, I wasn't always disrupted. And one of the biggest things that I valued was the time with my family and the flexibility. I will tell you this, if you haven't heard it from other people, it was a beautiful thing for me to be able to send emails, make phone calls, and then go outside and go cut my grass, go for a walk, go to the store and get milk and bread, come back, take a nap, watch Law and Order, and get back on and do more work. I literally in 8 to 9 hours did all of those things and got more work done than when I was in an office. I could not believe how convenient it was to just simply get up. I didn't have to get up, get myself together, get in traffic, get to work. I could literally go home, go downstairs, get on the computer and get a cup of coffee and get right to work. So I valued flexibility. Flexibility was very important to me. And I realized that I loved it and I loved being home with my family. So when I started to make the career switch, the first thing I started looking at was I looked for jobs that allowed me to work from home. Okay. I was sold on being the ability to be able to work remotely. So I zeroed in on jobs that allowed me to work from home. I am a teacher by trade, so I started looking at teaching online. And I looked at, do I have some of these skills? Some of these skills I didn't have. I can tell you right now, I had zero technology skills, didn't have any, but I was smart enough and confident enough that I could figure that out. So I did my research, I did my homework, I started applying for jobs. And again, I started out part time because I still had my full time role. I wasn't quite sure how this was going to work out. So I applied to part time online job roles. Um, and fortunately, I was able to find an online job that allowed me to teach part time. I loved it. And so I started with that. Long story short, I did well because I enjoyed it. It was in my skill set and it gave me the flexibility to be at home with my family. I was soon promoted to a full time position. I left my previous employer and now I have the ability to work from home and do something I love job wise and have have a fulfilled career and I can spend more time with my family. So that's how that worked for me. Okay. And again, this was a process. This does not happen overnight. It took about a year. 6 months to a year is what it took, step by step by step. Okay. Now, again, you say, okay, Terrance, that's great. You have a doctorate. I am not a professor. Okay. Maybe I don't have an educational background. What about me? Okay, so there's several other people that I've worked with, and I've worked with thousands of people, and I got a lot of success stories. But I'm just giving you some examples. So I had another client, and again, these are people I worked with last year. Had no high school diploma, had a criminal background. He had just been released from prison, and he had served like a 5-year term. So I took him through the same process. And one of the first things I asked him is, what do you value? He has four children. He's not married, but he has 4 kids. And one of his biggest things was finding a roof over his head. And so then I went to the process of, okay, well, what was important to him job wise? This guy, he loved to cook. And of course, he wanted to go back and get his GED. And this was more personal for him. His mother had passed. And before she passed, one of the things he promised her was that he was going to get his GED. So we know what he valued. And job wise, he loved to cook, the culinary arts and education. So what did we do? Step one, we got him a part-time job at a restaurant. He wasn't breaking the bank, making a lot of money, but again, we got him started, right? Again, get started. While he was doing that, we sat him down and we got him GED lessons. And again, a lot of stuff was having to be done virtually, but we got him to study for his GED. I also had a connect with a financial advisor, helped him rebuild his credit because the reason he couldn't get an apartment was because of his credit, not so much his background. He rebuilt his credit. I'm happy to say today, not only did he pass his GED, he just completed his first semester in college. He did it virtually. This individual I worked with had zero technology skills, and he just completed his first semester in college virtually for culinary arts at Columbus State. And he obtained housing, so he's got an apartment where he can support his kids, and he ended up getting promoted at his job at his job. So that's just an example of exactly. That's just an example of one person. Again, this was a year process. It was not easy. He had a lot of barriers, but in a pandemic, it can be done. And so I want to encourage you all that this is something that can be done whether you have a doctorate or you have no high school diploma. So I'm gonna rush through these next two. My second client, she had an associate's degree, but she also had a criminal background. She had been gone for 7 years, incarcerated. So she wanted to switch careers. She worked in the food industry. She wanted to go in the health industry. She loved people. Okay. Again, what did she value? Her thing was family and flexibility. She had a mother who she cared for, and her mother pretty much needed round the clock care. And so she needed to be around her mother. She needed a job where she could be at home, but she still wanted to work with people, right? So what can she do that allows her to stay at home and work with people? So we did the research. We looked at her skill set, what she was good at. And what we found was a job on a health accountability specialist. And basically this was people that you sit at home and you're making calls to people who are on diet plans. And I can't remember exact intricacies of it, but essentially she had maybe 30 to 35 people on her caseload that she had to call and check in on every week to make sure they were taking their medication, that their diet was under control, on and on. So she got the job, and now she works from home making phone calls. Skipped ahead there. She works from home making phone calls now, and she can now care for her mother. And now I'm happy to say this year I'm working with her. Now she's going back to school to get a bachelor's degree online in counseling. Again, this is an individual who has zero technology skills, and this is what she is now doing. My last client, again, everybody, and if you notice, everybody's situation is different. Okay. Some people had a high school diploma. I had a doctorate degree. Some people have an associate's degree. He had a high school diploma. He had some college credits, but he served a life sentence, 27 years in prison. Okay. Got out, had issues finding a job because of his background. Again, went through the process. What does he value? Supporting his wife and kids. And he had a newborn daughter that was on her way. A lot of pressure there. He was currently a foam operator in a warehouse, and he wanted to transfer to being a CDL truck driver. That was his dream, to be a CDL truck driver. So we did the research, and in fact, I was able to get his CDL paid for by WIOA funding, and that's a whole nother webinar that I talk about in regards to funding. If you there's certain criteria, but you can apply for this money by the federal government that is set aside for you that you can obtain. So we went through the paperwork, we went through the process. CDL cost about $5,000 to $6,000, depending upon where you're getting it from. He got his CDL, went to school, and he is now employed as a truck driver. And he can, because he is now recently released from parole, he can now travel nationwide to get more jobs so that he can make more money and support his family. So things to remember, okay? Because I said a mouthful, but things that you need to remember. And again, I'm giving you a bird's eye view of what you need to think about when you're switching careers, right? This is for anybody, degreed or not, displaced or not. So again, I work with people who have been homeless, people who have criminal backgrounds, people who are literally want to just switch careers. I work with everybody. This is for anybody. So do not feel like you have to be in a certain line of work, a certain field, or you have to have a certain background. You can switch careers whenever you want to. Okay. There's just a process and there's steps that need to be taken before you do that. Be sure that you know your why and what you value. And this is non-negotiable. Okay. If you value your kids and your family and spending time with them, then you need to stick with that, because that is what's going to drive your your career switch. So very much stick to that. Again, if you don't have kids, you don't have a family, and you still just like being home, then stick to that. Okay. But whatever you do, just know your why and know what is it that is most important to you as an individual. Embrace creativity and be able to be diverse with your skill set. Again, the pandemic changed a lot of things, and you have seen the world evolved, and eventually businesses adapted. We figured things out. So you have to learn to embrace creativity. A lot of things are never going to go back to the way that they were employment wise. So be sure that you are diverse in your skill set and the things that you can do. And you can always learn new skills, right? Through things such as volunteering, networking, working at part-time jobs. You can gain those skills. Keep your options open. All right, don't zero yourself in on one job. There's nothing wrong with that, but be flexible in your approach. Prioritize action. Do not wait. You literally want to get on this as soon as this webinar is over. Those jobs that are 8 million jobs that are available today, they'll be gone tomorrow. Unemployment is going to be ending soon, and every state has been different with that. So I encourage you all, for those of you who want to make this switch, again, it's a process. Get started. You're not going to figure it out. Consider starting part-time first. You don't want to just jump into it, but just get started. Ask for help. You can't go about this alone. You have to network. You have to communicate. For me to make the career switch that I did, I had to connect with people. And again, I did that via LinkedIn, and it opened up doors for me. Last thing I want to do, stay encouraged and know that you can do this. This is for anybody. Okay. I've seen people from all different walks of life, including, as you saw, people who served a life sentence in prison, and they're out there now doing this work. line of work. And I'm very proud of it. But this is for anybody. Know that you can do this and stay encouraged, and know that the opportunity is out there and the time is now to make that change. If there are any further questions, please reach out to Medlin Workforce and Reentry Solutions at 619-335-8737, or go to www.medlinsolutions.com, where you can find us for more information. Here are the resources for you all if you want to look up more additional information. As I said before, that EDGE program, I gave you the link earlier. If you ever want to look that up, that is available to you as well. And I want to thank you today for listening to the webinar. I would love to hear more of your feedback. Please go ahead and tell us what you think of today's webinar by clicking on the link before on the survey marquee. And that is it. Thank you all for your time today. And if you have any other questions, you know how to reach me. Take care and have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.